Scholars, it's Friday. You made it to the end of another week and you've made it to the finish line, finishing strong because we're still at 84%, which I'm thrilled about. Um, we got some good reflections to look at today. I'm going to go over the my answers for yesterday. I hear that there was some debate around certain sentences that you were highlighting of whether they were a claim or whether they were evidence, and it's a tough call. I'm not 100% right, but I'll argue why I think certain sentences I color coded them the way I did. So take a second to not minimize, but make my screen smaller, pull up your work from yesterday so that we can compare our highlights. I've kind of disappointed. There's more than a few students who really made a really no attempt at this activity at all, and other students who it's very clear you didn't watch the video from yesterday because I gave you the answers for the first two paragraphs. So if that's you, step it up, pay attention, and let's check our work. All right, so we're picking up at the third paragraph that starts with however. Remember, you were to do my language down here is not the same. What language did I use? I made improvements to this assignment after I made my answer key. Let me make sure it's the same on this one. Sorry, almost done. All right, you were to do sentences that were focused on the reader's claims about bucks in red. Sentences that break down how London helped the reader realize this in green, and sentences in yellow that were really just context or just facts that aren't really claims or opinions. All right, so here we go. However, once Buck is kidnapped, remember this prompt is saying like, how did Buck change from being the king of the manor to the lead dog? You guys are gonna tackle this same prompt on Monday, okay? So we're to the second half of this where he's becoming the lead dog. However, once Buck is kidnapped and his environment changes, his development is rapid because he grows to rely on instincts long dead. That's the claim. His claim was that it was fast, and how it became so fast was because of he relied on his instincts. This sentence I hear, this next one that I did yellow I hear was subject to debate from Ba and Nevaeh and some others. This one says, through listening to his commands from his ancestors, Buck grows stronger and learns to fight and survive, ultimately defeating Spitz to become head dog. A lot of people wanted to do this in red because it's a build off of the claim from the previous sentence, which was in red. I totally see that point. It is a build off, so it is kind of an extension of the claim. I thought it was a little bit different because I feel like if something is a strong claim, then it takes multiple pieces of evidence to prove it and some analysis to prove it. So in the first sentence, it says his development was rapid because he grows to rely on instincts long dead. You're going to have an example of how it was rapid and some explanation of that. You're going to have to argue how Buck is relying on instincts long dead with a couple different evidence with analysis. In this next sentence, the one I did yellow, listening through these commands from his ancestors, Buck grows stronger. Pause right there. I can prove that he grows stronger with one sentence. There's one sentence, I think, in chapter 2 that says like Buck's muscles were hardening. That's it. I don't have to argue that. I can just show you the sentence. So to me, this was a summary and not an argument. That he learns to fight and survive, ultimately defeating Spitz to become head dog. That's a summary too, because I can point to one sentence in chapter 3 when Buck defeated Spitz, and that proves my point. I don't have to argue it. So the difference between really a summary and a strong argument or a claim is an argument has to be proven with evidence and analysis. These other things that he listed, Buck getting stronger, Buck learning to fight and survive, that's too easy to prove I can prove that with one sentence. So that's actually just a summary. Okay, let's keep going. London suggests that Buck is able to come, quote, into his own again and is finally truly, quote, alive as a result of being in the wild. This one is clearly green because it's breaking down how London got the reader to that realization. Remember the analogy I made of the relationship between a reader and a the author of the book and the reader is like two basketball players, one throwing an alley-oop pass, the other catching it and slam dunking it, right? How did the author set you up to make that realization, right? That's when you have that aha moment. That's when you caught what the author was trying to get you to, and you bring it home with your slam dunk by applying your thinking to it. Okay, so remember, green is when we're breaking down how the author got us to that point. Next sentence. London's shift in language illustrates that as Buck's environment changes, Buck is able to access his authentic self and become a true leader. So right here is again breaking down what London did. He's saying that as Buck changed, London's language about him changed. London describes Buck as a leader whose every, quote, muscle, joint, and sinew was aglow and rampant, end quote. Clearly he's green because he's still breaking down London's moves, specifically the words that he uses to describe Buck. These animalistic descriptions illustrate that Buck is no longer the domestic dog that he once was, but he is instead now a ferocious leader among his fellow dogs in nature. This is the reader kind of bringing it home and showing you, summing it up for us and making a claim, like a concluding claim about Buck. The changes in London's descriptions emphasize how Buck's profound appreciation for his instincts and ferocity, rather than his pampered lifestyle, have contributed to his development from domestic king to the wild, quote, head dog. This one is red. Some of you might have seen London's name and automatically gone green. This one is more red because it's the author giving you what they realized about how Buck has changed and how, he's got an appreciation for his instincts and ferocity, and he'd take that over his old life. Now we go green. London suggests that Buck always had these qualities, quote, within him, but he was able to access his true personality when he returned to nature. All right, let's take a look at some of our reflections, all right, because there were really two things I wanted you to get out of this practice, and the three reflections we're going to look at are going to highlight those two things I was hoping you would kind of have your aha moments about as you did this activity. Monica, she said, and we're going to focus on the differences because I wanted you to pick up on something that you could work on and improve on based on this exemplar. Monica said, one difference between this author's literary analysis writing and my own is that the author gives more explicit analysis and explains it deeper, whereas I just summarize. That is true. Monica, you write beautiful summaries, but yeah, often they are just summaries and it's not really breaking down. Remember, analysis is when you break down something. How did it happen? What was the impact? So great reflection on that. And scholars, when you were doing this reflection, some people were comparing what this author said to what they would say. You haven't written this yet. So the focus was to look at how this author did the literary analysis and compare it to when you write literary analysis, like when you analyzed Elie Wiesel's writing in Night and Frederick Douglass's writing in Narrative of the Life of a Slave, right? Whenever you do this, what do you notice? Or what do you not do that you're going to work on? And Mani said, a difference between our analysis is that the author connects it, and she means the author of this writer. This writer connects it to the author's thoughts, but I only do my own thoughts. Yes. So Imani, if I was to break down your typical lit analysis using the same colors we used on this activity, there'd be a lot of red and there'd be a lot of yellow, but not enough looking at the author's craft. I'm so glad you picked up on that. Look at how much of this writing is green, guys. It's a two-parter. All of your big writing tasks they're really two tasks. It's what do you think? Like, what is your realization about the character and about the book? And then the second part, how did the author get you there? A lot of times we leave off the what the author did to get us there. So that's the first big aha I wanted you to realize is, oh man, whenever I do this writing, I really need to break down how London showed me that thing that I realized. Okay? The other aha that I wanted you to focus on, and I'm going to make this our feedback of the day in a second. Caleb said, one difference is that I pick longer pieces of evidence while he only picks a small piece of evidence that can still support his own thinking. That's a huge point, and that's the other point that I wanted you to realize. When you give evidence, you don't have to find that perfect golden sentence that says what you want to say. Sometimes we quote like 3 and 4 sentences, they're way too long. Or sometimes when we think we have to find just that one quote that says what we want to say, it doesn't say everything that we want it to say. So you'll notice throughout this reading, the author, this writer, just plucks keywords and key phrases and mixes them in with his own, really, really kind of in a manner that flows. This is called embedding evidence. And this is what we're going to work on. This is going to be our feedback for the day. I want you guys to practice embedding evidence while you write about this book. All right. So notice right here, we've got one word, king. As a result, Buck was able to plunge, quote, into the swimming tank and went around with the judge's sons, end quote. Right. So he's embedding evidence here that just helps him with his context. He also embeds really key words that he wants to use to show what London is doing. So this might be kind of weird because sometimes you can embed evidence just while you're summarizing, and that counts as context. And sometimes you can embed evidence into your analysis, like right here in the third paragraph, where it says, London suggests that Buck is able to come, quote, into his own again. And he was finally truly, quote, alive, right? So you can embed evidence into your summary just to kind of make it stronger, to show like that you're not making it up. You can also embed evidence in your analysis as you're really diving deep into what you realize or the author's craft. So today we're going to practice embedding evidence. We're taking a pause from reading further into the book. I want to make sure everybody is caught up and crystal clear on the key characters and the key events just from chapters 1 through 3. Okay, so I'm not assigning any new pages. A lot of you might be able to answer these questions well, just off the top of your head. I want to push you to just scroll back into the book so you can find some key words that you want to embed um, in your writing that comes straight from the book. So just practice embedding some keywords into your own sentences. This is going to be a summary. This is going to be a recap. So you just got 3 questions. Why did Buck consider himself to be the king of Judge Miller's estate? Was he actually king? Number 2, what does Buck learn from the man in the red sweater? Notice these are all 3-pointers, so they don't need to be full-on ASAC responses, but they can't be answered with just 2 sentences. And 3, how does Buck learn to be a good sled dog? Okay. What I recommend let's look at number 2, right? If I'm pushing you to practice embedding evidence / keywords or phrases into your writing, it might be a good idea to plan what keywords or phrases you want to build in to your own descriptions or summaries. So if you look at number 2, when it asked, what did Buck learn from the man in the red sweater? I'm going to find like that key thing that he learned. I'm going to embed that in, and then I can explain the rest on my own because I have a strong memory of that scene when the man in the red sweater beat the mess out of Buck. So I can describe that one on my own, but I do want to embed in the exact lesson just to make sure I got it right. So let's go to right here. This is on page, well, it's not page 11 really. Hold on, let me hide this. Yeah, page 11. Actually, top of page 12. Yeah, here it was. He was beaten. He knew that, but he was not broken. He saw once and for all that he stood no chance against a man with a club. He had learned a lesson, and in all his life, in all his life, in all his afterlife, he never forgot. That club was a revelation. Was a revelation. It was this introduction into the reign of primitive law, and he met the introduction halfway. The facts of life took on a fiercer aspect, and while he faced that aspect uncowed, he faced it with all the latent cunning of his nature aroused. As the days went by, other dogs came in. Other dogs came in crates and at the end of ropes, some docilely and some raging and roaring as he had come, and one and all he watched them pass under the dominion of the man in the red sweater. Again and again, as he looked at each brutal performance, the lesson was driven home to Buck. A man with the club was a lawgiver, a master to be obeyed, though not necessarily conciliated. Of this last, Buck was never guilty, though he did see he did see beaten dogs that fawned upon the man and wagged their tails and licked his hand. Also, he saw one dog neither conciliatory that would neither conciliate nor obey, finally killed in the struggle for mastery. So Buck learns to do that in between. Like, man is someone to be respected, but I'm not going to go so far to um, kind of suck up to him. Like he gave nicknames like wagging his tail and stuff. So that was the lesson right here, right? A man with a club was a lawgiver, a master to obey, a master to be obeyed, though not necessarily conciliated. So how I would approach this, if I wanted to practice embedding evidence, I'm going to summarize first who the man in the red sweater is, right? Um, Buck arrives in Alaska. Actually, this was in Seattle, wasn't it? And Buck's crate is brought off the train in Seattle. A man in a red sweater is waiting for him. He was holding a crowbar and an axe. He began, this would be a chance to do some embedding evidence too, right? Because when we started breaking into the box, I could use some specific words that the author used. Right here, driving the hatchet into the crate. Driving the hatchet into the crate. See it right here. This would be a good thing to embed too in my summary. He began driving the hatchet into the crate in order to open it. What do the other men do? Scattering. Said instantaneous scattering. There was an Instant, can I spell this off the top of my head? Instantaneous. Yes. Scattering as the men afraid of Buck ran to the walls. Right? So this is an example of me, as I'm summarizing, I can just look back into the book and just steal a word or two. I know that the quote eventually that I want to use is "a man with a club is to be obeyed," right? In my own words, I can explain how, but to not go too far in obeying him. But you can obey the man, but you don't have to fawn over him like the other dogs are doing. Okay, so this is an example of embedding your evidence. I want you guys to practice this as you answer these questions today. Okay, I'm going to erase this. So if you need it for reference, just come back to this video and come to this part. But this is going to be blank when you open this document. Okay. The other activity that you have after you answer these 3 questions is a activity where you match the characters with their description, because I want to make sure that we're not getting anybody mixed up or forgetting or like not noticing anybody. So here's the example. Each character is listed on the left next to a letter, and then the descriptions themselves are on the right. Read the description and then try to match it with the character that describes it. What I recommend, if you're going to go to office hours today, where Miss McKinney is going to play the video, for those of you who, sometimes like we did with the Raisin in the Sun, we would read some sections and then watch the video so we could kind of match up our mental movie with the real movie. It'll also save you some reading time if you just want to catch up via the video. Go to Miss McKinney's office hours. But before you go to office hours, try to fill out this character matching part so that you can go into the video and realize maybe if there's one that you're missing because you can't figure it out. Now you know what you're looking for as you read. Or maybe you got one wrong and you can fix it. But here's how you'll fill this out. There's these empty parentheses next to each description. You're going to write the matching letter inside there. So, for example, a clever, sometimes lazy dog called the malingerer. We know who that is. Who is the dog who's always malingering, which is kind of hiding or taking too long or taking their time? But they're also clever. But yeah, they're also kind of clever and sneaky. Which dog would that be? Right, right. Remember when Buck stood up to Spitz because there was a dog who was taking too long and still sleeping when it was time to go? Who was it? That would be Pike, right? So Pike's letter is E. So next to this description, I'll just type E in there, right? All right. So you guys have till Sunday at 10 p.m. to get this assignment in. I really recommend you go to Miss McKinney's office hours, like always, but today is movie day. And then also, um, don't be a don't. You guys can study together. You guys can discuss your answers together. Don't if you're mixed like lost on a certain question, it's okay to call up a friend. You just don't take their exact answer. They'll talk you through it. Like if I was stuck, I could call up Nevaeh and said, "Hey, I'm stuck for number 2." And if Nevaeh is being like a good coach, she'll say, "Okay, what do you have?" Um, and so that she can see what I'm confused about, and then we can discuss it, right? So don't copy each other and don't just give each other answers. But if you do want like a study buddy and you do just want to make like check in with a peer before you turn something in, do it, right? I used to study with my friends like in high school. We would try to take the same classes so that we could study together. Same thing in college. So you can also do that in office hours. All right. You guys have a great weekend. Um, Try to go to office hours to watch the movie and make sure you get your 30 minutes of Lexia in. All right. Bye, guys.